Hey guys, EIGA here. Today we're taking a look at my take on a high-end steam machine build in the beautiful TETRA S case from Thor Zone. We'll go over the build process, the software setup, as well as testing focusing purely on Linux gaming and the highest level of performance achievable today with an all AMD build. At 9 liters of volume, the TETRA S is for me the perfect size for a steam machine build, and I think the proportions work a lot better compared to its bigger sibling, the TETRA R. Linux gaming is generally best on AMD GPUs, so for this build I'm going with the 9070 XT Reaper from PowerColor. While the Reaper is a true 2-slot card and the smallest 9070 XT on the market today, the TETRA S does allow you to fit cards up to 3 slots and 307mm in length. For CPU cooler height clearance, we drop down from 70mm in the TETRA R down to just 55mm in the S, but that's plenty for a gaming focused build, even with a 9800 X3D CPU. I have a complete build guide on my EIGA website where I go into the smallest details of how I assembled everything, but for now let's take a look inside the TETRA S. To get inside the case, we first need to slide off the unibody shell. The locking mechanism is operated by sliding one of the front columns, giving us toolless access to the inside of the case. The actual core is surprisingly open, which is absolutely great for building. It may look flimsy at first glance, but trust me, it's a lot stronger than you'd imagine. We do have some assembly work to do before the case is ready for building, like adding in the power button, the optional front Type-C port, motherboard standoffs, and the internal power cable. In my case, I also swapped the stock front columns with the ones made out of walnut. Swapping them is fairly straightforward, but it does require a bit of patience. The outer columns feature a sliding action. One of them operates the locking mechanism, and the other slides to reveal a hidden USB Type-C port. The center column is also functional, as it acts as a cantilever that operates the power button switch. So all of these mechanisms need careful screw tension adjustments so that they operate smoothly. But all of that extra work is worth it. I'm not usually one to mix wood with computer parts, as I find that to be a bit odd, but I will make an exception for walnut every time. Quick throwback here to the liquid-cooled build I did in the Nanook R, which remains one of my all-time favorite builds to date. Now, there is one particularity of the TETRA cases that make them slightly unusual and perhaps a bit difficult to build in, and that's the way motherboards are mounted face down onto long stainless steel standoffs and then secured from the backside. In theory, this sounds simple enough, but in practice it requires paying a bit of extra attention. Sometimes the long standoffs aren't lining up perfectly, and you need to loosen them up and realign them with the motherboard mounting holes. It's a similar story with the riser, which you need to pre-bend so that it stays out of the way, but in such a way that it still lines up with the motherboard's PCIe slot. It's nothing truly complicated, but if you've never done something like this before, I imagine it would be pretty daunting. Now let's talk a bit about the CPU cooling setup here. The current holy trinity of low-profile cooling consists of the Thermalright XP90 X47 full copper, offset brackets, and the 4070 FE fan housed in a CNC aluminum frame. I know, it's very specific, but this has been tried and tested by the small form factor community. That being said, I decided to try out this build with the slightly taller XP90 X53 full copper. It's a classic case of potential fan turbulence due to the fan being too close to the side panels, in this case the shell, or sacrificing a bit of performance but ensuring fan turbulence is kept at bay. In my testing, I did find that indeed there is a bit of turbulence with the X53 and the 4070 fan, so I would recommend just going for the X47 full copper as previously mentioned. Power supply for this build is handled by the Corsair SF850, which is perfect for handling a 9070 XT, which I will also be undervolting to further optimize power draw and acoustics. As always with my builds, I'm using custom PSU cables to make my life easier, and these copper Teflon ones from Cablester may be my favorite set yet. With the case assembled, you can see just enough of the cables inside, and I think it really adds that extra touch. One shortcoming of the console-style form factor compared to sandwich-style cases is that what you gain in terms of footprint and slimness, you lose in terms of active case exhaust. The TETRA S does make efficient use of its available volume and gives us the ability to fit two 60mm fans right next to the PSU. I went with two Noctua NF-A6 X25 PWM fans, as I figured there's no good reason not to. They are decently quiet up to about 70% or so they certainly won't do any harm. Installation is a bit tight however, and at least with my Corsair PSU, they push slightly against the cables. You can clearly see how the power supply is no longer sitting perfectly straight relative to the edge of the case. and that's even after removing these small rubber gaskets on the outlet side of the fans. With the fans installed, it's also very clear that custom cables are more or less a necessity here, as there's not a lot of room left for managing excess cables. And on that note, you really don't want any loose cables in the TETRA S. On both the TETRA and Nano cases from Thor Zone, you absolutely need to make sure that all the cables are kept as contained to the core as possible to avoid interference with the shell. I'm also not really a fan of the metal on metal scratching that happens every time you need to work inside the case. If you're like me and you like to tinker, or you just clean your system every other month, then yeah, it's not the most pleasant sound to hear, and with large GPUs, you have to be extra careful not to scratch them. But that is indeed the price you have to pay for a design with no visible screws on the outside. Something else I would like to see Thor Zone improve is the way the add-on system works when ordering their cases. The first thing that comes to mind is how the front Type-C port is bundled with the RGB light rays. Personally, I think the USB cable should come bundled as default, and the RGB light rays can remain an optional add-on. Secondly, the TETRA has these beautiful chrome stands, which again are not bundled by default. However, they are integral to ensuring the case is stable in the vertical mode, and they add a bit of extra clearance in the horizontal mode as well. I would much prefer to see 2 stands included by default, and then the extra 2 for a horizontal setup can be sold as an add-on. If you don't get the stands, all you get are some simple rubber pads, which certainly would feel a lot less premium on a case like this. The rest of it is fine, but I do think this system can be streamlined and simplified a bit. Okay, let's talk about the software side of things. So I chose to go with Bazzite as it's currently the best SteamOS-like distribution for a desktop PC. This may change following the release of the Steam machine, but for the time being, Bazzite is what I would recommend. It's super user-friendly and has everything working out of the box. For a less locked-down experience with greater customization and more frequent updates, there's also the option of going for CachyOS instead. I put together a quick guide that covers everything you need to get started with Bazzite, including setting up fan control, GPU tuning, and an in-game overlay via Mango HUD. Installation is really easy and streamlined, and in many ways it's actually faster and less frustrating than installing a certain other operating system. You can have it installed on the same drive as Windows, but generally this isn't recommended as Windows updates can easily break things. And that gets us to the question of why you would even choose to go for a Linux gaming build in the first place. For me, the value proposition of Linux is that it's basically everything that Windows is not. Over the past years, Windows has been getting more and more bloated, with non-optional updates and a lot of features that nobody even asked for. Gaming performance on Linux with AMD hardware and potentially even with Nvidia soon is practically on par with Windows, and thanks to the work Valve and the community have been putting into the Proton translation layer, the majority of games simply just work. That's not to say you can't run into issues. In my case, I simply could not get my integrated amplifier to work over USB, but it just may be an outlier, as everything else, including my audio interface, worked with no issues. In the end, I used headphones for my testing, which was fine. I also had quite a painful time getting fan control to work with my B650i Aorus Ultra motherboard. It required some driver fixes and setting very specific BIOS fan curves in order to get it to work. Thankfully, I now have all this written down in my guide, but I did waste about a day trying to troubleshoot this. I had no issues with anything else though. I even got HDR to work, VRR at the full 240Hz my monitor supports, and gaming performance has been absolutely excellent. Of course, we need to address the elephant in the room. Any competitive games with kernel-level anti-cheat systems will not work and likely never will, unless those systems are replaced by the developers themselves, and that can only happen if enough gamers ditch Windows. So that may very well be a deal breaker if you play games like Apex Legends, Valorant, or Battlefield 6. I don't, so for me it's not that big of an issue, but I do recognize how this may be an uphill battle. For now though, let's take a step back and look at how my TETRA S build performs. First things first, I did want to undervolt the 9070 XT for better efficiency. For this, I used a software called LACT, which allows complete control similar to the official AMD Adrenalin software in Windows. I reduced the power limit by 50 watts, added a negative voltage offset to essentially overclock the card at lower voltage points, And on top of that, I added a small boost to memory clocks as well. The result is performance that slightly exceeds stock levels, at least in the two games I benchmarked, and of course we get the benefits of lower temperatures and lower power draw. When skipping technologies like ray tracing, in most of the games I played, I was getting performance that didn't feel that far off from my 5090. So if you're willing to make that trade-off, you're getting insane value for money with a system like this. The 9070 XT handles itself really well even in 4K gaming, and FSR4 generally looks pretty good. Games that don't officially support it can usually be updated by forcing a specific Proton launch option. It's a similar story for getting HDR to work correctly, and it's really easy to do. You can find all of these flags by taking a look over on the ProtonDB website to see what others are using for specific games and features. Let's actually take a look at some thermal testing with the TETRA S. For the following tests, I used fixed fan speeds on both the CPU and GPU, measuring 42.5 decibels at a distance of 30 centimeters. Okay, let's start with a 1-hour session in Arc Raiders, which has become my go-to for testing CPU temperatures in heavy gaming scenarios. As we can see looking at the logs, CPU temperatures fall somewhere in the mid-70s with frequent spikes up to around 80 degrees. This is an excellent result for the small low-profile cooler. GPU temperatures max out at 67 to 68 degrees, which is also respectable, especially for a 2-slot card like the 9070 XT Reaper. RAM temperatures were also fairly well behaved, staying just below 60 degrees, which I was very pleased to see. Now, one of the hardest hitting games I played was Crimson Desert, and this game was especially sensitive to undervolting, requiring a less aggressive voltage offset compared to any other game I tried. So for this one, I did a static scene soak test for 20 minutes. CPU temperatures were a bit higher this time around, which I found to be quite surprising, but nevertheless, a maximum of 85 degrees is a very respectable result for a 9800 XQD and a low-profile cooler. GPU temperatures maxed out at 64 degrees, despite running the less aggressive undervolt profile. Lastly, RAM temperatures behaved exactly the same, staying just below 60 degrees, which again I was very happy to see. This setup genuinely feels like a high-end system. There are a few things you can tweak here and there. For example, you could go for a 3-slot GPU for even better thermals, and you could swap the CPU with a 7800 X3D if you find a particularly great deal. For the motherboard, I would also recommend staying away from Gigabyte boards if you want to avoid the fan control issues I encountered. Although this particular board, the B650i, has two front-side M.2 slots, which would make it perfect for a dual boot setup, so there is that. For me, this build really opened up my appetite for Linux gaming, and if you guys would like to see even more content like this, please let me know down in the comments. There are reasons why I wouldn't switch to Linux for productivity work just yet, primarily because some of the software I use either doesn't work or has certain limitations. But that's really a case-by-case basis thing, and my hope is that things will generally continue to improve. This video was a lot of fun to work on, and as always, thanks for sticking around until the end. I'll see you guys in the next one real soon. Bye for now.